Welcome to Basis Points, the podcast where we break down mortgage and real estate news with a fresh and fun twist. Brought to you by Interlink Mortgage, we keep things lighthearted while giving you insights into the industry, mixed with real-life stories and a dash of humor.
It's been an interesting 30 days.
I mean, it's been more than 30 days even. Though. I'm just talking about since the last time we recorded.
Oh, yeah.
It's been since before Christmas time.
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
And it's been like 2 years in Trump 2.0 terms.
But I read, 70 plus executive orders so far?
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
And I mean, literally 1 month in.
Yeah. When do we start?
Insane. We're going, baby.
Oh, we're going.
We are rolling.
All right.
Basis Points.
Yes.
The new edition.
Welcome to the new edition or the March edition.
The March edition of Basis Points?
Of Basis Points.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good times. We got a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
You got anything you want to kick us off with?
Well, mine is kind of, it came out in February when they were over in Davos about Ray Dalio.
You will eat the bugs and you will be happy.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, Hans whatever, right? And so Ray Dalio came out and said that we're in trouble with our debt.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's got a great book on principles and debt financing, et cetera. And he was talking about how we cannot run. Let me read it exactly. We cannot run we cannot run more than a 3% deficit.
Is he talking about the United
of
States
the GDP
specifically or like a country?
Specifically the United States.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, he's got these principles that are for countries themselves, and he analyzes several countries, but right now we're at about 6%, according to him. And so if we don't, he said 3 years time frame, we're going to have a financial heart attack in the United States if we don't do something. So that was the big news that hit, for me, and it hit Bloomberg again this week.
Yeah, I mean, it's really kind of the bedrock of everything that Doge has been doing, right? Is we are under this absolute pressure to fix our debt situation. Otherwise, we're going to be, we're going to be in big trouble, really a debt spiral.
Yeah, I personally think if we don't do something within whatever these 3 years are, then we're going to have rates not go down, but there's going to be an adverse selection of the United States debt, and rates are going to go up. Maybe we'd see the 13% that my parents saw back in the 70s. Yeah, it'd be terrible.
Yeah, that
wouldn't be fun.
That's definitely terrible for us. So what are your thoughts so far on the measures the Trump administration has taken to try to reduce that? It's
rough. It's going to hurt. It already has. He wouldn't cut basically the same way that Trump and Elon Musk have cut. He would do different.
What would he do?
His is more along of restructuring of debt.
Oh, okay.
So,
all right.
So, but I personally am in favor of these cuts. I mean, they got to happen. It's just tough. They've got to happen.
A lot of people say that they are cutting too much too fast, right? That they're basically arbitrarily making cuts, and they're making big cuts to important systems, important people. The example I keep hearing is they cut the one guy from the National Park Service that can unlock somebody who's stuck in the bathroom at Yosemite or something,
I know.
which is the silliest example ever. But what are your thoughts on that? I mean, do you agree? Do you think they're maybe going too hard, too fast, or do you think this is the right pace to do it?
Well, according to Ray Dalio, we've only got 3 years left, so they better do it all now.
Yeah.
And they've got to move faster than everybody can. They can't. The best thing, in my opinion, is, and Mr. Wonderful says you got to go in, when you go and take a company over, you've got to cut immediately 30%.
Right.
Just across the board, 30%, and just live with it. But he said that's the only way. When you go over and take over a company, that's what you have to do when it's a distressed company.
Yeah, and I think we definitely are just in distress for sure. And I can see some of the arguments where, hey, you can accidentally cut a super important service, but the thing about a super important service is that you'll know right away. And so to me, I agree. And I think that it's okay for us to be going in and just making drastic cuts as long as there is that process, right? Can we have an exception where somebody can basically the ability to raise your hand and say, hey, we really need to come back and revisit that, which it feels like there is, because I have heard where, within a pretty short amount of time, 48 hours, they're trying to reinstate positions or reinstate responsibilities. So, a lot to be seen, but I like it.
My question for you is this: does that 20-80% rule apply to the government? For example, 20% of the people do 80% of the work. Because I saw this blog, this lady was on there. It wasn't really a blog; it was a YouTube short, saying how her colleagues, she was told to not outperform because that's not what you do when you have a government job.
Right.
Yeah, and this gentleman would come in. He'd be there an hour earlier than everybody else, but he'd be in there an hour earlier, and then she always walked in and found him sleeping with his head down on his desk all day.
Well, I guess that depends on how you're defining productivity, right? I mean, if productivity is defined on when you hit that punch-in clock, then you can nap and you're productive.
Yeah.
So hopefully, you would think that there's systems and processes in place to check that. But unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case. Look at what they found when examining the Treasury wire system, that they were able to send wires without payment codes. They were able to send wires out with any sort of reference. And so, I think there's just an inherent lack of controls in the government sector that we have to abide by in the private sector that they need to streamline in. To go back to your original question, the 80-20 rule, I don't know that it does necessarily apply to government, because my impression in a lot of cases is that there aren't really incentives within the government to outperform and to succeed, right? I mean, the whole purpose that you really do that in the private sector, at least, is because you want to get ahead, you want to get to that next role. Whereas in the government, it seems like the incentives, if you look at it from a purely economic standpoint, the incentives are to really fly under the radar as much as possible, because you want to be able to make it through the next administration and the next administration and the next administration. And so if you're somebody who is in the Biden administration and you are all actively going out super pro Biden, everything he wants to do, you're going to be first on the block under
what just happened.
So that's the thing with government, is the incentive system just is completely skewed from what we're used to dealing with in the private sector. So I don't know that it does apply, or if it does, it's in a different shift, right?
Yeah. On another note, but related, is Warren Buffett is hoarding more cash than he ever has since the GFC, they call the Great Financial Crisis, started in 2007.
I'm familiar.
And so that's another telltale sign, I think, that we may be on the precipice of something a little interesting here. So maybe rates will come down. The spreads between corporate debt and treasury debt are so tight. And last time that's happened, every once in a while, or how many every years it is, 8 to 10 years, when spreads blow out, then sometimes treasuries and mortgage backs will that spread will not be, it will tighten, for example.
Yep.
But I don't know, with Mr. Warren Buffett holding a lot of cash, that's a little interesting, worrisome time. I don't think the economy is as strong as we think it is my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of the data, especially today, the PMI numbers came out, right? The ISM data, and it's showing significant increase in prices and then weakness in the other signals, right? And so that, to me, definitely shows some cracks. I was at the Housing Wire event, the Economic Summit last week. Great event, by the way. Housing Wire really does an amazing job with that. And they had a couple different economists there, and they all kind of talked about the spread between the 10-year and mortgage-backed securities, or the mortgage rates, and that they're tightening from the insane wideness that they were a couple of years ago, and that they're starting to tighten. They're still blowing out a little bit, but they're tightening a lot more. Are you seeing that on your side?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I think that's what we've had this rally last week, and it's continuing a little bit today. Is I think we're starting to see. It's not so much the inflation anymore. Inflation's coming under control, and the jobless claims that Fed has that two mandate, that two mission mandate, and so I think unemployment, I don't know, it's pretty low where we're at. The 4-ish level is pretty strong, and inflation's coming. It's under control somewhat. I don't think it's nothing like our friend Malay, which has done a fantastic job down in Argentina.
Yes.
Yeah, of having, it was around 25% inflation instead of 253% inflation year over year down there. He's done a great job. But I think that the economy right now, I think is starting to signal, at least in the bond market, that they think the Fed might cut
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's a bit of a change from
It is.
from very recently, actually, where they were thinking maybe
Nope.
two. Yeah, no, yeah, is it two at the most this year? Yeah, last week at the Housing Wire event, I think somebody was talking about potentially 3 or 4 even this year. So, there's a lot to be seen there. And speaking of the tenure, some of the big changes that have been coming in with the Trump administration are specifically regarding CFPB, FHFA, all of that. And I've been kind of heartened to hear Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, kind of talking about the need to get the 10-year Treasury down. So it seems like the team that's coming in there is kind of dialed into those numbers as well.
I sure hope so. Hey, you mentioned something really interesting, and you actually spoke at the conference, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah. And you talked a little bit about what if the CFPB goes away or becomes basically inert, then you would have 51. Including DC? Okay.
No, I think the point I was trying to make, I think that was on the Mortgage Collaborative podcast, is basically, kind of, I think this industry, we are prone to just freaking out and layer that on top of a completely crazy Trump administration. It's just, we need to make sure as an industry we are utilizing calmer voices and more rational thinking, right? And so when everything was going on a couple of weeks ago with the CFPB, everybody's like, "Oh, the CFPB is going to go away. There's no you're going to have now you're going to have 50 state regulators and blah blah blah." And but we already have that, right?
Right.
We've already got 50 regulators. So my whole point was I have 51 regulators right now, 50 states plus the CFPB. And if the CFPB were to go away, we would have 50. Now, granted, some states are going to take different approaches, so there is a bit of chaos, but it's not going to be calamity. But with the CFPB director that last week just went through his first round of Senate confirmation hearings, he seems to be somebody that is going to come in and be more of that rational, common sense regulator, right? Kind of getting away from that regulation by enforcement that Rohit Chopra kind of fell under.
Yeah.
He's an FDIC guy, former FHFA guy, has experience with policy advising in the Senate. Really just seems to be a level-headed guy. So I think we'll be fine.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. We'll be fine. And that's the thing about us in mortgage, right? Is look at everything that gets thrown at us. I mean, just take the 2020s. We had to deal with the pandemic and overnight interest rates at 0 and crazy amount of volume and everything that we had to deal with. And what did we do? We adapted to it. We figured it out and we moved on. And
I remember those days of just I talking to our CEO at the time and a president at the time, and just not getting any sleep because what's going to happen tomorrow, but we made it. And it turned out to be a pretty good year too, or years.
Yeah, exactly. We're paying for that now.
Right.
But I think that's the thing about it is if we can there's a lot of noise going on around us and a lot of noise that, we can't handle. Now, granted, it's always important to focus on advocacy and talk to your legislators, talk to regulators when you can, but there's still an there's still things that are out of our control.
Right.
But if we just focus on what's in front of us, and what's in front of us is serving our communities and making sure that the homeowners in our communities are able to, raise their families, build generational wealth. If we just keep that as kind of our keystone through the whole process, we'll be fine.
Right.
We'll get through all of it.
Well, what else is going on? What's anything with the TMBA?
Yeah, Texas MBA. So I mentioned Housing Wire. We actually started a really great partnership with Housing Wire. So I think you're going to see a lot more Texas MBA and Housing Wire collaboration. We just announced a huge event that we're having November 4th at the LBJ Library in Austin, Texas. We're doing it in partnership with the actual library. It's really exciting. We're celebrating the 60th anniversary of HUD, and we're really working on getting some top-notch speakers there. So that event is great. It's not going to be just a Texas MBA event. It's really something national that we want to celebrate, not only the history of housing and what we've done for our communities, but the future of housing and where we're going for here. So,
that's great.
Yeah, we're really, really, really excited.
That's November 4th.
November 4th in Austin, Texas.
Austin, Texas.
Yes, at the LBJ Library.
I'll put it on my calendar.
Yeah, you should. You should. In the meantime, however, I'm going to be working on my own meme coin. So
yes.
The pump and dump, baby. It's where I'm going.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You know what's funny is I own I used to sit and watch YouTube shorts on Cardano, which is ADA, the coin, and boy, it sure helps when your boy who founded the coin is good friends with Trump, because those 4 cryptocurrencies just took off overnight.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Well, and Trump announced, was it yesterday or the day before, about us becoming, the global reserve for crypto and all that.
Oh, that is a great question. I'm glad you said that. So what is all this interest? That's another thing they were saying, is that the dollar is kind of weak right now, which I thought was funny because it seems strong around the world, right? But there were some guys on Bloomberg this morning talking about how the dollar is relatively weak and it should get stronger. But what effect will these not meme coins, but Bitcoin, Ether, and ADA and Cardano, and it's the last one, Solana. What effect will that have on the U.S. dollar, do you think?
I don't know. A lot of people really like it because it's kind of a way to get out of the fiat currency, for you to be able to get out of that kind of controlled, highly regulated banking system, to be able to trade more freely with each other. And so there's a huge, specifically on the libertarian side, they absolutely love the cryptocurrency for that very specific reason. So in terms of its impact to the dollar, I'm not quite sure yet. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are far smarter than me. We can get, we can get Mr. Sachs, the crypto czar, to come in and maybe do a guest appearance and talk about it. I know you and I have discussed previously the potential impact of the BRICS nations, because they're all going out and trying to get off the dollar as a reserve currency. And that is going to have a far bigger impact on the value of the dollar. But Trump basically came out and said, if you do that, then we are hitting you with massive tariffs. So,
I think we're down to, if I remember correctly, 59% of all trade is done in U.S. dollars. So we're still pretty strong, but it is less than it used to be.
Yeah, definitely. Now, of course, with everything going on with Russia and Ukraine and kind of the United States appears to be trying to, at least try to build more of a diplomatic relationship with Russia. Perhaps there's implications there because they are in BRICS. And so there could be implications there that if we can build a stronger trading or diplomatic partnership with Russia, potentially that could also, dissuade the BRICS people from actually
and to tell you where I stand a little bit on that, I am against what they did with using SWIFT as a weapon against Russia. I really think that did a lot of damage, long-term damage.
Yeah. Well, and I think, you're correct, and that a lot of the sanctions and things the Biden administration did to try to hurt Russia only ended up helping them. It really actually came back to bite them. And, I just think that there's nothing wrong with trying to have a diplomatic relationship with a company or with a country, right? And so, I'm watching with optimism some of the efforts that are being made to try to restore that relationship, right? I don't think there was a single phone conversation between the United States and Russia during the entire Biden administration. And I just think if you look at the 2 biggest nuclear superpowers, that's not a good thing.
Yeah, that's not a good thing at all.
Yeah.
What happened to Hillary's reset button, right? Got reset itself.
Got Epstein.
Yeah, Epstein. It's even better.
Going to talk about this.
Yeah.
We're not.
I don't know who's on the list, actually.
I don't know that anybody is ever going to know who's on the list.
Yes. Well, the latest I've heard, correct me if I'm wrong, that Pam Bondi came out. I'm going to date this podcast now, but
I think we've already done that. You're good.
Okay. Is she only got 120 pages? Come to find out, there should be thousands of pages that were disclosed with Epstein papers, and she got 120. That's it.
Yeah. And there's definitely some controversy there because of the way she did it with the binders. Yeah. It was information that had already been released. So it's a whole lot of drama. I've kind of given up on any hope of actually seeing the list, which is a shame because, you're talking about sick individuals there.
Yeah, so that is really sad what happened. Really, really sad.
Yes.
So as far as compliance is concerned, anything coming down the pipe?
I think we're really kind of watching what's going on, obviously, with the regulators, with what's going to go on with CFPB. I think from that angle, can we make any changes or improvements to LO comp? I mean, there's just a lot of things that having a new administration come in and maybe a different perspective on it. I think crypto regulation, crypto legislation, that kind of thing. That's kind of really what's on my radar from a compliance perspective. Maryland's got a bunch of big things going on right now with their licensing changes. That is a pretty big topic that has actually impacted correspondent or aggregators go being able to purchase loans because
that's right.
it's like they're requiring trusts to be licensed. So that's a big deal. That's really kind of what I'm seeing on the regulatory front. Really, also, the one thing we haven't talked about, though, is the potential for GSE recapitalization, right, and coming out of conservatorship. So I think we can probably do an entire episode just on that one, though. But that's obviously a lot coming down.
Yeah. Do you think it'll happen?
I think Trump really wants it to happen.
Yeah.
So and from what we're seeing so far, 5 or 6 weeks in, what Trump wants to happen, he finds a way to make happen. So, I think it's good for us as an industry to be on the bleeding edge of it and make sure that we're prepared for it, and also that we have voices, right? MBA is a really big voice in the U.S. government, trying to make sure we're doing it with sanity, doing it with rationale. Scott Bessent, kind of that's where his comments about the Treasury needing to come down were specifically in regards to GSE recapitalization.
If they took Fannie and Freddie and privatized them or took them public, wouldn't that be like the biggest ever securitization that went public? I think it's like huge and massive.
Probably.
Yeah.
It would be huge.
Yeah.
It would be huge. I mean, it's going to have a completely disruptive impact on our industry, regardless of how they do it or when they do it. It's going to have massive implications. So, it's something we need to be definitely prepare for. And, hopefully there'll be some good private capital wanting to come in, because, it's hard to see how they can make that change without having a negative impact on rates.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking is you go public, you don't have that. Before it was the implicit guarantee. Now it's the explicit guarantee. Maybe that goes away. And then rates, once you become private again, rates go up.
Yeah.
But
could they potentially have better products, right? I mean,
sure.
Under the PSPA, they tried to, really basically get away from non-owner, from second homes. And so, perhaps this opens up the ability for the GSEs to have, better products again.
Yeah. We might actually have a better functioning market.
Yeah.
You never know.
You never know.
Yeah.
T's and P's, baby. T's and P's.
T's and P's. That's right. Well, what else has happened, I guess, since these 70-odd executive orders? I mean, it's been so fast, like breakneck speed.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I can't even keep track anymore, Leo. Can you? Yeah, I can't.
I don't know. I think we've probably hit our limit for this episode. We should probably, give it another 30 days and 82 executive orders and see what we get.
Yeah. It is pretty funny. So, well, I think that's all I got for this month. Anything else you want to throw in?
No, same here. Like I said, Texas MBA, our LBJ event, November 4th coming up. And then we have our annual convention coming up in Dallas at the end of April. So really excited to see everyone there.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.